Hi Ravi, welcome to
Hello.
Dare to Bear.
Thank you.
And when I was setting it up, you were among the first few who came to my mind. And
Okay.
as I was preparing for this bit today, I realized that we know each other for over 20 years,
Right.
and that's like a very very long time. That time I wasn't even 20 when I got to know you.
All right. I didn't ask the age, so I'm presuming you were that.
I was in school.
Yeah. 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 Perhaps yes.
Yes, definitely. I remember the Titanic day after 10. So, why you came to me is because I think at that point in time, 20 years ago, when you had a conversation, you became like a friend, guide. And I thought that I could literally look at the view of what the world is through the eyes of this person who is genuine and is not going to put up any mask while describing anything. So, are you like that, or is it just my perception?
You see, humans are evolving as we talk. So what we were 10 years back with our series of successes, failures, and experiences, and most likely both emotional, personal, and professional, we evolve as a human being. So it is important that you have to always choose whether so I always choose among two things as a standalone thing. One is you can either be truthful or you can be politically correct. Okay, most of the time in the business relationships you have to be politically correct because you do not know, and you cannot be open hearted all the time because people start judging you on the go, right? uh, on a personal front, well, yes, again the same thing happens, but more likely why are we so question comes, why are we very close and very open with our best friends? Because we don't hide behind a wall or a curtain. We are normally good. We act the way we want to act. In fact, the worst cuss words that we use are with our best friends. Why is that so? Because
Forget. I'm going to cut you off. Forget the we. I want to know you. I want to know the
yes,
latest updated version of Ravi Kikan. So don't wheeze in it. Just tell me
so
about you.
I'm more thankful now. I'm more considerate about the fact that people need help and support. I don't try to mince my words. I'm try to be truthful. I was not truthful in terms of I was not I was always politically correct when it's still some time back, but now I try to be truthful whether the other person likes it or not. Um Extrovert, I was always one. I'm more extrovert right now. Uh, I speak on the face of it, but generally I avoid mincing words and not telling people, what they don't want to hear. But sometimes I do have to tell because that's the right way of looking at it. So I say I'm more direct. I'm more more grounded and more introvert, extrovert right now, more other than anything else.
But way back when we met, and as you were talking, I was roughly calculating, and it doesn't go back 20 years. Actually, goes back 22 years plus. Now, at
Right.
that point, you didn't miss your words. You were just yourself. Oh, so was it the result of a humble uh, upbringing by genuine parents from a small town? Was it that? Because as we say that the cities and the metros tend to corrupt a person's mind as well.
No, I don't think so. It's about upbringing because you see, you know, the worst and the best people come out of everywhere. So, you'll have a real smart person coming out of a small town who's good, who's humble, right? And the same person could be coming out of any good posh area or any uh, you know great city as well. So that doesn't make any background doesn't make any difference, but yes, it makes a dent in terms of the early age. That factor, I say. So during the early ages, you understand what the kind of person that you want to become, right? And it is beyond your parents. You see them, of course. You see your people around you. You see, but then in the end, you decide what you want to be. So maybe
So what
yes,
did you
I would.
decide to be?
So I was from a very small town, so my journey has been from a very small town, not very small, but in those times it was. So I always wanted to understand and see how the city looked like and how people were, and it's good to be direct. Studying in a English medium school, it gave me an edge of understanding and at least giving a conversation. Surprisingly, till about 8th standard, I never used to even speak in English, right? I started speaking in English after my 8th standard because my English teacher told me to go on the stage and recite a poem. Surprisingly, this I did my English honors, right? And I now have written a book as well. So not that I'm great in terms of English now, but that was always there in my mind when I was a kid, that English was my weak point. So I worked hard on it. I started learning it, and today, if you ask me, people have their own success factors in life. I think small little milestones in life are more important. And for me, these are one of the milestones that I did. For example, I started to learn in English. I started to write in English, which at that point in time, from a small town perspective, was a big achievement when people spoke in English. And maybe a great private school in Delhi, Bombay, or anywhere else might not even think about, or the student there might not even think about these things. You see, they might not even say English bolna is common, right? But for a person who's coming from a small background or a small city, for him to converse or write those kind of small little things is also a milestone in life. So I always tell people when I speak to them, saying that people have their expectations that you want to be a doctor, you want to be a scientist, and you want to be a entrepreneur. But I think small little milestones in life, which define life in terms of achievement, give a lot of joy. I mean, they should also be enjoyed as much as your career ambitions, or some fruitful pit stops that you have achieved in life. So I say enjoy your small wins as well.
So is it about that? Do you think it more is about a journey of becoming who you do rather than titles and job positions?
Well, 90% of people actually do not know what they want to do and what they become, right? Irrespective of their ages, right? But
But how about
sometimes
you?
you will sorry, come again, please.
I'm saying, what about you? You are a startup expert. You're a community builder. So what about you? Is it about titles, or is it about becoming the person that you that you have been because of the milestones that you've kept achieving?
Right. See, I again, as I said, the biggest point is to be your natural self and share what you actually are. You don't try to be somebody else and someone else. So in that case, I've had more failures than success. I've failed miserably in my ventures. I've sometimes failed in my businesses while I was employed. Sometimes I was bad as a manager, but then I improved to become a good manager. I had a fair amount of success in business as well. I had a fair amount of understanding in helping people to come out of them. But then sometimes people need to understand that it's not only success that helps you out, it is also your failures in both on a emotional, personal, and professional side that help you into becoming the person that you are. And if you can help people or share those kind of failures as a learning lessons, I think that is also one kind of success that you can give it to people. It's not about everybody can tell you how a successful person can tell you 10,000 things how to be successful. Maybe the timing was great. Maybe he was at the right place at the right time. Maybe he had money, right time, right place, right kind of mentors. Maybe his luck was great. But there are a few people who have been extremely well, smart people. They have failed, both sometimes on an emotional front, professional front. Now, were they at the wrong time, wrong place? No. Maybe their luck was not good. Maybe. So in that kind of cases, I always have learned, and I always speak it out, and I have experimented that on myself, saying that failure is not final, and falling down is not failure. These are two different things, and this has to be understood very clearly by anybody who wants to really progress, right?
So
So
then define
first is that failure is never final.
so define failure and success for me.
Failure is a learning. I would not say failure is falling. Failure is learning. So you might have a failure once. If you learn, it's great. But if you have multiple failures, if you don't learn, then you'll keep repeating it. So failure is an experiment that you do to achieve the thought process that you want to hit. That's whether that's in business or in personal life. Success is I think for me success is happiness. For me, for example, community building is happiness. So if you ask me, yes, I'm successful. Do I have a large community that I operate on, yes. Is that an achievement which gives me multi-millions? No, it doesn't. But does that give me the aptitude or the bandwidth to reach out to XYZ people across the world? Yes, it does. Does that give me happiness? Bottom line, yes, it does. So I'm successful. Yes, I am. So parameters of success for each and everybody in the whole universe, I think, are different benchmarks for them. You need to define your benchmarks in terms of what gives you happiness. And I think if you club that happiness with that part, then you're successful.
Okay, so what we're talking about here is that you are successful because one, you are happy, and secondly, you're contributing.
Yes.
So that makes you successful. Okay. So tell me, in terms of the emotional, personal, professional failures that you spoke about, as you look at yourself, all these years of journey, the life that you've lived so far, has it made you a better person or a bitter person?
And we are social animals, right? We can't be robots, right? So that also means that you always carry some amount of bitterness in terms of your bad experiences, whether on personal ground or professional ground, right? Uh, Better person, of course, yes. So if I would have looked at things I was wanted to do 20 years back, I've come, I think, around those figures as well in terms of achieving things out. In terms of bitterness, yes, you carry those kind of bitterness, but then you come in terms with those things in terms of learning, and probably some things linger on in your life which you can't change, because the only thing and only person that you can change is yourself, right? So the bitterness can only be taken out if you take out the negativity out of yourself and become a little positive in life. uh, uh, Success and happiness, I think, shadow your negativity as much as it can be acquired by anybody, and you need to find your own happiness and success. The more you get it, the more chances are that the bitterness in your life and the bad experiences subside down. I mean, they should not be buried out, because then they come out at certain point in time with vengeance. So you need to come in terms with those things, right? The bitterness is in your life, whether that's part of failures in your journey in professional life or personal life, or some kind of wrong or bad experiences that you had. I think you need to come in terms with them as fast as you can, and maybe then look into more things and people and outlooks that give you happiness and satisfaction, because once you have more of them, then the room for negativity and the room for what I call as bitterness reduces by a big margin. And that's all is required in life, because if you look at life, it looks like about 60 to 80 years or 90 years, but if you calculate it in days, it is some defined days. So you don't even know that tomorrow you're going to live or not. It's right now as we talk. So it's up to you how you want to decide to live that second moment of your life or your second part of a journey. The first part of a journey is that you're born. The second part of the journey is the realization that you were born for a finite time. Your second life starts from there. So the moment you realize it, you're born again. You do things again with a different perspective. um, you start living your life the way it should be.
So what you're saying is that it's establishing truth with the negativity. So it may be there, subsided, kept somewhere, but it's just as you are at peace with what it is and moving on, taking that along. So it's a part of the system, ecosystem somewhere, but so be it, because you're focused on the success, the path that you're traveling right now. Is that what I understood correctly?
Yes, fairly enough.
Okay. Now this thing that you just spoke about, that it's the second birth, when you figure out that it's finite number of years that we are here for. What happened that you figured that out? Would you like to share with us what happened in your life that you realized it's finite years?
Yeah, so my first half of my life, the moment I was working in my corporate life, uh, full-time job in corporate life, never experimented in life. I was fortunate enough to work with some amazing people, right? So I at that point in time, what, some 11 years back, 12 years back actually, I started to, I wanted to work of my own, and I started my business, right, with some amazing partners, but I failed. uh, I failed, and I had some multiple failures again along with that in terms of you know doing some other businesses as well. Then I started understanding that, look, maybe I need to pivot a little bit. So I got an advice from some great people and said, why don't you start teaching people what entrepreneurship is all about, how to experiment and do things that you want. So I started sharing that, and it's, I started teaching as well. I taught in some good B schools, you know, and shared those kind of knowledge, right? So in the end, I think my understanding for the perspective was that was a time when I did not want to experiment. I was more politically correct. Money was a key builder for everybody. It is in that kind of age group. In fact, it doesn't require any age group to be in. Um, Now, when I look back and I see, th- that previous time, the time before this was more driven by what the world wants from me, rather, right? How I can acquire things out, right? The second part of life was to give, not acquire, right? So the best part is that, the best thing in life is to understand what is your gift in life, right? And that could be anything. And the best part and the noblest part is to give that gift away, right? There's a biblical saying for that. Now, so for example, you learned and acquired some knowledge in life about doing certain things the way you want. In the early days of life, you try to acquire it and keep it within yourself. You don't show it. You don't want to give it to somebody because you think that's your IP, that's your intellectual property. But that's not the truth, actually. That's a universal intellectual property, right? The more you give outside, the more abundance that you get. And that's the whole core thinking about it, that whatever you've learned, you need to just unlearn and relearn. Get a get And not just keep it within yourself or your rooms of your mind. You need to just let it go. Give it to as much as to the world outside. The more you give, the multiple amount of knowledge comes back to you. So it's a direct proportional to what happens outside in the world. The more you give, the more you get. So that's the second realization that I've had. So in terms of totality, if I understand it, the basic totality is, from an acquisition point of view of knowledge, wisdom, things, you're more in the giving point of view in terms of knowledge, wisdom, and other things in life. So that's the kind of thing that has happened with me in my second part of my life, which I've started to now dissipate.
And what's your IP?
I think my IP is telling the right kind of um right kind of understanding, uh, in whatever fields that I am in terms of leading and giving it out to people. So my IP is, I think it would be very honestly, is to find the happiness in your professional outlook. So my IP is to tell people that, if you can build your hobby into your profession, that's the best thing in the world. So I always try to make sure that people who are great at their hobbies and want to build in their profession into that. So I try to help entrepreneurs and early stage companies or people from not just from a business point of view, from an emotional point of view, in telling, guiding, consulting, either way, because I'm a consultant as well at times, right? I've been a consultant, so this is my bread and butter as well. But beyond bread and butter, there's some amount of emotional intelligence that is required to tell them. So I don't mince my words. I tell them the truth. They might like it, they might not. And specifically because I come from North India, my cuss word levels are very high. Uh, so some people
Well,
deal with it.
you developed that. You did not have that to begin with. I know. That's
So
something
I've evolved.
that's part of
So I've
coding.
evolved. Yeah. So I've evolved with my cuss words as well. So some people deal with it. My IP is my kind of cuss words, and they're kind of brilliant.
Okay. And so mincing your words doesn't really go with your profession. So I think it's just as easier because you kind of get acknowledged and paid. When I say paid, it could be financial or just intellectual, being paid off for not mincing your words, because they don't want people like you to tell them that you're on the right track. They would want people like you to tell them, criticize them, show them where they're lacking. So not mincing words and being exposed, being honest is something that works in your favor, isn't it?
Not all the time, I would say. Sometimes it generally backfires because people judge, most of the times. If you speak nicely to somebody and agree with whatever he or she says, you're most likely a conducive person. You're more social as accepted by them. But then if you start telling them, it's like saying, I will not use the curse word, but I will give you an example. So if you're working with an entrepreneur and he spent Y amount of money instead of X, right? Um, Most likely, if you tell him this, there are three ways of saying. The first way of saying is, you should not have done this. I think you should do it like this. That's the nice way of saying it. The second way of saying it is, you are a donkey. The third way of saying is alpha, beta, gamma, donkey. So my IP comes in alpha, beta, gamma category. So some people do not even want to get into those things as at times, because the kind of degree of failures or degree of fall downs that small little things can bring is magnanimous, and people should understand that. So instead of going on the negativity or the negative connotations of the sentences, people should look in the content and the important part which has been described and shared. Not many people do that. Some people do that, are great people. We work with them. There's a good camaraderie between those guys, and those kind of founders or those kind of entrepreneurs are good to go, cool to work with, because they understand that informally, if something is being communicated to you, handle that with care and understand it. So it's saying, like for example, in Hindi, if you there will be a long sentence in English, but in Hindi it will be a small sentence. So it's like saying, uh, please do not do this will create a lot of shit, for example. That's a cuss word use, I'm sorry for that.
Yeah.
But then if in Hindi, if you have to talk to him and say mat kar, and you press on you and say don't do it, the English doesn't make sense. Probably the Hindi vernacular works out. Mat kar bhai, you stress on the certain words and tell him. So coming back to it, not it's not a rocket science to give your understanding, but it's important that you tell the truth on the face of it. Whatever, don't mince your words and speak to the on what is right, should be done in your perspective. I think people understand it later or sooner, depends on them.
So that's okay. Their understanding sooner or later doesn't budge you from your point of saying what
Why
they,
should it? Why should it?
and you have their good intentions. You have good intentions
Yes,
for them.
correct, absolutely. See, as long as your intentions are clear and you don't have a hidden agenda with whatever you're doing. For example, you're consulting with a startup and you want to, and he's done some mistake or she's done some mistake, and you give a call to that startup, or you speak to her or him in person and say, look, this is not right, I don't want you to do it. The person has to understand that there's a relationship, there's a symbiotic relationship between you and the other person. And this person, whoever he is or she is talking right about my venture or my company coming from his or own experience. Now, the moment you realize this, the moment as a person from the receiving end, I think you're good to go. You understand things from a different perspective.
Yeah. I will come to the hidden agendas in a while. Before that, I want to talk about your book. I didn't know you'd written a book, you're an author. And
Yeah.
this is how to validate your startup business idea. And
Right.
you recommend that anybody who wants to start or is thinking about a new venture, this is a must read. So tell us more about it. Tell us about the experience of writing a book and what does it do?
So sometime back, I've shared that I run one of the largest community of startups on LinkedIn. And time and again, about I interact with about 100 200 people a week, most of the time. They write, I interact with them. That's something which I like doing, so it's my hobby as much as anything else, to interact with people, understand what they're thinking. So somewhere down the line, I always understood that there are 4 5 key problems that globally entrepreneurs face. First is funds. They don't have funds to start a business. But beyond that, there are some key things that are important. Beyond funds, there's something which is called your basic idea, right? Whether that's a service business or product businesses, right? They need to just validate that before they launch it. I have been a failure, or I've seen people failing down because they don't validate their startup idea. See, if you don't have a market for your product or service, they're not customers who are willing to pay for it, right? That idea that you're using or wanting to use is useless. Basically, you're starting to. It's like starting a restaurant. You might start a restaurant which is a Thai restaurant or a Korean restaurant, in place where there's a demand for food, right? But so for example, if you you start to think to open a Korean restaurant in, say, Motihari, or district in Bihar, or say, probably let's assume, Alwar in Rajasthan, maybe don't go by the words or cities that I'm saying, but I'm saying just like that, without even thinking anything, right? So you might be successful, you might not be successful. That's basically shooting in the dark. Basically, you're spending money, right? You have money and you want to waste it. So if you have to really tread on ice waters and icy waters, and you want to test the market, the first thing that you need to do is to validate your idea, which is to basically understand whether you have a target market for that product or service. Second is you have some customers who are willing to pay for your product or service, right? And the third is whether that idea is solving a basic problem in the market which is there. If these three things are tick marked from a basic holistic point of view, your idea are good to go. So for example, if you're launching a service of training, which is an NLP course, right? Uh, is there a market for an NLP course, first of all, right? Second is, are there any enterprises, SMBs, oblique startups who are willing to pay for an SMB course? Okay, you have 20 of them, tick. The third is is it solving a basic problem? For example, now the basic problem is mental health while working from home or remote working. So you've spoken to 200 people or 100 people, and that's a mighty problem right now. And the answer is yes. So if these three things are yes, there are about other 25 things that I've listed down by speaking to about 500 odd entrepreneurs globally, time and again, and taken notes and then put in that in book along with some other people as well. And it has worked out. And along with these three things, these 25 odd things which I've detailed in the chapters, is a basic essential for anybody who's wanting to, probably is in the idea stage, or is in the ideation stage, or is wanting to build a go-to market planning. He or she must ideally validate the idea, business idea, from a very holistic point of view, not from a bookish knowledge, but from a very realistic knowledge. Because failures are a direct precaution to it. Because you see, not only your business, your money, your idea is going down the drain if you don't validate it, because it's going to go down. It's your emotional fatigue as well, right? And you can't bounce back your emotional fatigue just like that. Money will come, right? But other things is also at stake. So from those point of view, try validating it as much as you can.
So now we are in the middle of this economic and human resources catastrophe, the COVID that and think life is seemingly coming back to normal only on the surface. But post that, how do you see the community building and the entrepreneur market shifting? And what is one bit of suggestion, advice that you can give to people listening to this? How do they need to be flexible during such times and post these times? Because I think life is not going to be the same, world is not going to be the same. What worked pre-March 2020 is not going to work anymore, not even 6 months later, not even 1 year later. But what is your take on that?
So you had two questions. Can you repeat the second part of your question?
The second part is, how do you think life is going to be different? Or do you think we're going to come back to normal in 6 months, 8 months?
The surprising element that I find out is, and I'm not being political here, please don't quote me on the political front in terms of my affiliations. Politics is something which will go parallelly, and there'll be a party which will say this is great happening, there's a party will say this is not great that is happening. Yeah. But beyond that, our earth has been, this is a philosophical topic, so I will put some philosophy into it. Time and again, our earth has been, I would say, curtailed or bombarded by various obnoxious diseases, right? That Ebola, uh, you know, be that Nipah virus or whatever. This COVID is not going anywhere in this 6 months, 4 months. It's going to remain for a long time. Even in spite of having a vaccine, we might have this now entering into the entire norms of our society. So either there are two ways of looking at the optimistic way of looking at things is yes, it will remain. What do we do now? The pessimist of thing is, यार मेरे को मरना तो है ही, जाके मैं party कर लेता हूँ. that other way of looking at things is like this. I say if you have to be an optimistic person to glide through these times, because there's too much negativity. You go to Twitter, you go to Facebook, sometimes on LinkedIn as well. There are negativities that are coming from left, right, and center. Some people are saying the world will die. Some people are saying they're anti-establishment. Some people are anti medical fraternity, etc., etc. So complaints are big. What are the optimists saying? If you go through them, they all are talking about two things. One, this is the new normal that is happening, right? So the new normal for startups or new ventures is a basic understanding of looking at the world from a different angle, which primarily means is I will not survive, I will excel.
And how?
Correct. Point number two. How will I excel? So when we start a company, or when we look at things, or we look at amazing companies that have happened, most of the amazing companies have happened because they have solved a basic problem in life or the market, whether that's business oriented, whether that's personal oriented, or otherwise. Or there is a second lot of things that have happened is they have created economies of scale, like what basically Chinese have done. They've created economies of scale, right? The third is you've innovated something which is disruptive in nature. There was no market, there was no economies of scale, but suddenly you create something which is obnoxiously new, right? Innovation. So if you look at it, these three categories, solving a problem in the existing market, right? Economies of scale, creating economies of scale, or the third part which I said before is disruption or innovation. In the current scenario and in the coming times, there will be a lot of challenges in the market that you think. Yes, you got to be futuristic. So whether that you're in healthcare, health tech, pharma, or say, for example, alternate medical remedies, right? Ayurveda for that matter. West has not completely come in terms with that, but Asians, particularly Indians, have about 3-4 lines of alternate medicines. For example, cure actually. One is Ayurvedic, Unani, Siddhi, homeopathy. Homeopathy is more German, right? But again, uh, we have lines of, so finding out, researching, and finding those existing gaps in the three categories that I said, right? In whatever lines of business that you can think of in the future. Maybe future could be 3 months from now, it could be 3 years from now, right? And starting and working towards it might validate your business idea there and then. Otherwise, you'll have to wait for things to happen, and you go by the flow.
What we're saying is look at the future and build from there.
Yeah, you backtrack it, and backward integrate it out, saying, look, I think six months from now, people won't be sitting together in a restaurant, right? They would want to communicate with the waiter, or with the manager, and do something. So if there's something I can do, will that be a problem? Yes, it would be. While I go out, I will have to stand in the queue, buying everything. Would that be a gap? Will there be a gap in this? Transportation, uh, touchless transport, supply and distribution, because people will now avoid, you know, touching things out more often as before. That street food culture might take a hit. It might not go away completely, because we are typically we are not. I would say I love street food. I might want to go and experiment, but I will think twice now. So, is there something that I have an opportunity to address to? Now, if I look at these things and find out opportunities out of doing 100 iterations, I might have one. And maybe if I give it a shot, validate with about 100 people who are paying for that opportunity that you're trying to build, I have an idea where I might run a business on. So that ways.
So now with the situation changing, if you were to give us two greenfield industries, what would they be? Would you like to share that? Just industries that people could think of investing in or having a startup in.
Tech was an industry before, but now it is something like what used to what English is like in a course. So I would not say tech. Tech is taken for granted. So tech will be the core backbone if you look at the human body that you're trying to build. So I think the only thing that we need to do is, and this is from a very um, uh, public point of view and more of a government point of view, undertaking point of view, is that tech should now be will be given should be given precedence in the very early years. So maybe class one onwards, for that matter, right?
Hmm.
Not, it might sound obtrusive because we started learning computer science in 11th standard, or I mean, now it has come down to 7th, 6th standard, 7th standard now. It has to really come down to about 1st, 2nd standard, because people will have to survive on technology, and technology will have to be the backbone of things. So that's, I'm sure this will happen, but tech has to be upgraded to the very early ages. Now, from a industry point of view, I would say, so taking out tech, I see a lot of things happening in health tech for sure. Health tech is one of the green industry that I feel will be important, along with agriculture. I think um, uh, that is where people are not moving towards, but were moving out, right? अपना खेत बेच के they were going to the city, selling out their land where doing agriculture, because they were not getting paid for the rightly paid for the amount that they were putting hard work on. So they were selling their land and moving out. So agriculture and not agri-tech. I think agri-tech also, if you took it you take it from a different perspective. So if you combine it, that's better, I guess. Agri-tech, agriculture, primarily agriculture, and health tech are prime. Along with that, pharma will take a big incline towards building medicines which are important. So I see in totality, agriculture, agri-tech, healthcare, health tech, and pharma.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's move more to the heart domain now. We've spoken a lot of things from the head. Let's move to your personal life. And all you've spoken about in the last half an hour is just work, work, and work, and startups, and how you're contributing, and happiness, which is actually the definition of success. But tell me more about yourself personally, about your circle, about your family, in the sense that how are you with them, and how have they played out as a strength, and how did you turn that into a strength as you moved along? So the emotional fatigue that you experienced, which all of us do as we live life, how did that emotional fatigue turn into an emotional surge of energy in the system?
Mm, see, I come from a small town. Small town people are more, they think about ambition more rather than sometimes, rather than actually, most of the time working for it. There are few people who work through their strata of their life. From a family point of view, I come from a joint family, right? And now generally it is not there, but initially, people had joint families, and the system works more than anything else. So we are brought up by our grandparents more than our parents, and the common enemy between the kids and the grandparents is always the parents, right? They are the biggest enemies. um, so if you look from that perspective, you know I can say honestly, my grandparents were brought me up more than my parents, right? Uh, so from that perspective, I remember that the core of understanding that I've got. My grandfather, for example, he was the first guy from his native town to pass out from St. Stephen's in the early 1940s, and he did physics honors at that point in time. I'm talking about way back in 1940s, right?
My
He did
goodness.
he did his engineering from UK. So all these things, he was an educated guy. So I'll give you an example. So once, uh, and in my hometown, I came from back from my college, um, and he was smoking. So he had a torn ganji and a torn dhoti, and he was smoking out in the lawn, and he was wearing a torn clothes, right? Virtually, जो घर में पहनते generally कई बार लोग. Uh, and I asked him, I said, look, you're an educated guy. And he was an old guy at that time also, right? He was about 75, 76. And I was a young guy. I was 20, almost 21, 20, yes, I was 20. So I said, you're an educated guy. You worked across in good places. Um, why are you wearing torn clothes? It was a good question, direct question. I said, you should not be wearing torn clothes, right? So he, politely, as grandparents are, he was very nice. He asked me to politely asked me to sit around with him. He said, and the first thing that he asked was, he did not rebuke. He said, how was your day? So I cooled down and said, it was great. But coming back to the point, why are you in torn clothes? The angry guy that I was, he said, okay, I'll answer it out. He says, look, when I go out with these torn clothes, and my question to him was, with these torn clothes, you've gone out and bought this cigarette. What would people talk about you? So he said a very good thing, which I remembered. He said, see, people who know me, who I am, they know me, right? I said, yes. So they wouldn't judge me. I said, yes, great. He said, people who do not know me, I don't judge them and I don't care. So if you look at that from that perspective, not that I'm telling people to wear torn clothes or fatigue ganjis. No, but the perspective is, there's a perspective into what he said was that, it is important to have a basic line perspective about yourself in terms of how you have been, right? And be as you are, rather than being somebody you're not and trying to impress the entire world and doing something that you're not doing. So have your perspective. It gives you a great perspective. People might not like it. You don't have to be stingy, or you don't have to be what you call as crooked, or you don't have to be how do I put it, irritating, right? uh, but you can still be yourself. So having said that, I've come from a family which has always been conducive, loving, and I've had thankfully four siblings, right? We have four siblings, um, and the if I talk about from a success point of view, I think the only success that I dreamt of when I was in my small town was to ensure that my siblings move out from that place and are well established. So if you look at me and talk to me and saying what is the biggest success that I've achieved, I will not count anything else. I will just count that all my siblings are well established, and they're living in about four destinations in the world right now. One is in all four continents actually, and I'm happy and proud of that. So if you ask me about my successes, I think my family success is better than all things that I've achieved in life, and this is one of the success factors that I put in right on the top. So, as I said before, success is a parameter, whether it's personal or professional. It's on of all to its own. If you have your own parameters, set your own success parameters. You might not get a lavish house. That's not success. That might be for somebody, right? But for you, it has to be on your own. Find that out. The moment you find it out, and the moment you achieve, you're happy and satisfied. I am. So I'm good.
Is that how you define as an emotionally rich life as well? That you're happy and satisfied, and that's being emotionally rich?
Yes, of course. You can talk anything that you want. You can talk to people that you love and like, and not be what you're not. And that's okay. You don't have to be somebody else, right? People know the way you are, right? People whom I call, they know they will not put me on the speaker phone. They know it. So when I call them up, they know that they don't have to put me on the speaker phone if it's somebody is sitting around them. My best friends or my good buddies or my people that know me, right? Because they know exactly what I will talk on the very beginning of the call. So having said that, that's the kind of love that you like having with your friends, close ones, that they know you, and you don't have to be somebody else. And I think that is life is good.
Yeah, so you moved out of that cycle of being approved and being liked by people, and just stepped into the space of just being yourself. So take it or leave it.
Works fine. No, you don't have to pretend what you're not. Sometimes you spend your whole life pretending somebody else, being somebody else, and you waste your time, energy, space, and you end up understanding that I waste all my time across being somebody else. I was not that person. Wish I had to change myself and become somebody else. Life would have been good. So nothing wrong in that.
So what do you have to say to youngsters today, the 17, 18-year-olds, the 25, 26 years old, who are still trying to figure out life? Because at least I have figured out that you cannot figure out life. You can only live it. So what do you have to say to them?
So if I have to speak to myself 17, 20 years back, to my younger self, that is the same advice I would probably give it to everybody. This is not an advice, I would say. This is more of a understanding, and this is not like how grandfathers would give it. I would give it in the right proportion, and thing is, is the only thing that you need to understand and do is that you need to understand and do things that you love doing it. So whether that's climbing up the tree or getting into some constructive uh, argument with people, which is towards debating it out to one's reasoning. I'm just giving varied examples. Is to find that sweet spot in life which you enjoy and brings happiness to you, whether that's playing cricket, that you play football, writing letters, writing for that matter, understanding physics. Do not listen to everybody, including your parents. Do whatever you want to do because they will tell from their perspective they are selfish. Parents are selfish. On a good note, they are selfish. I'm not saying on the bad note. So they always want what they couldn't do in life. उस स्कूल में पढ़ाना है जिस स्कूल में खुद नहीं गए, उस कॉलेज में पढ़ाना है जिस कॉलेज में खुद नहीं गए, उतना पैसा देना है जितना कभी पैसा नहीं मिला. I'm using vernacular, but that's the way of looking at it, right? This basically means that they are living their own life through their kids, not their own lives.
So how do you
Right?
ensure that you
And
are
that
not a selfish parent?
I can't do it. I'm a human being, right?
Hmm.
I can tell you what my faults are. I can tell you what I see myself in doing it. That now, since as a father, I can see things out in terms of understanding things from a different perspective, saying uh, people are selfish. I realize it now. But I don't want to look down on myself and say I will not do this. I can refrain from telling the truth to people or myself as well. That shouldn't be stopped. अभी मेरे से पूछोगे तुम ज्ञान दे रहे हो, तुम कर रहे हो खुद. So the answer is yes, I am trying to do it, but I realize it. How many people end up realizing it? My father always till this date, I'm moving towards I'm moved already actually moving towards middle ages, and still he's not happy whenever there's a discussion or argument that you haven't done your engineering.
Yeah.
So I sometimes think, and I laugh it out now. Initially, I used to get angry and irate, and I used to be throwing tantrums in left, right, and center, saying, "You don't know Jack." But now, I'm happy, and I've confronted this topic as saying, "Look, he's wanting to live his life through me, not his fault. He's being ambitious through me. He's selfish, but then for a good reason. Should I be like that?" My answer is no. But am I working towards it? The answer is yes. Should everybody work towards it? Of everybody to his own. But they should not. And you asked from a kid's point of view. So here is what the kid's point of view is, that you listen to everybody. But if you have to choose from listening to between your grandfather and your father, please listen to your grandfather. Don't listen to your father, because your grandfather, the emotional bonding with your grandfather, the relationship with your grandfather is pure love. It is not a possessive, selfish attitude. So if you have to choose it, please choose your grandparents and their advice. And trust me, they will never ask you to become a doctor or an engineer. Maybe 1%. They will all ask you, be healthy, be smart, enjoy life, play, have fruits, be healthy. Again, repeat, rinse, repeat. Very unselfish.
So this skip of generation, how does that make a difference? How did this skip of generation? Because it's funny you say that, but that's so right. Grandparents have a lot more invested in the form of love towards their grandchildren than parents. So what
Only
do you think
love.
causes that?
Only love. Nothing else.
Hmm.
If you look at it, it's only pure love. The most unselfish love. I think it beyond mother's love also. Mother's love also selfish.
Ravi, I
I have
can't
to eat.
hear again. It's
ये
a
खाना पड़ेगा. You know.
रुक जा नेटवर्क नहीं था
You
दोबारा.
can you can take it. You can afford to. Yeah. So you can afford to do that with the grandparents. You can throw all your tantrums. You will not get slapped out. You will not get scolded out. Most likely. Most likely. And this is universally true. Huh? This would be happening in US. This would be happening in Germany. This would be happening in Croatia.
True. Okay, so that brings me to the second last question, which is then how do you manage to look so young?
Sorry. Come again, please. I have to act like I have not listened to this question.
So what have you done to the middle age to look like a young lad?
I mean, you need to ask my mom and dad for that. I think they will be better. You know, the kind of foods that my mom ate and to the genetics that my dad has. So I think I'm happy the way I am. I think I look forward to doing things. Maybe the cascading effect to work with smart young people comes onto you. Maybe I would say that I would tend to work with smart young people all the time, mostly uh, who are smarter than me, or better than me, or more agile than me. So they keep me on my toes, perhaps, right? I've faced lot of obesity in my life, time and again, and I think that is because of my sometimes bad eating habits, etc. But I think the only sane thing that has happened in my professional life is that working with agile, smart, young people, and I would say agile and smart. Young is later, but agile and smart people, you know, it keeps you on your toes because they're mentally always agile. Whether he's a 50-year-old or a 21-year-old, they're agile people. So thankfully, I've had the best agile people to work with, and they have kept me on my toes. They've help me in my learning cycles. So I think might be a cascading effect. I will be modest on that.
Okay, I get that clearly. Okay, and if people want to get connected to you, where can they reach out?
Yeah, they can give me a shout on LinkedIn. They can connect me on Twitter. Facebook, I'm not very active, so and I don't use it for professional things and personal things as well. I prefer to be on Twitter and LinkedIn to be connected with the wide world because
Share
Twitter is
your
fast, instant.
user
I'll share.
and
So yeah, so Ravi Kikan on Twitter, with a that's my handle on Twitter, and LinkedIn. If you type Ravi Kikan, there will be only one Ravi Kikan that will come. Technically, there is only one Ravi Kikan. So if you even Google it out, my search result is 100%. So you don't have to go here and there.
it's a simple RAVIKIKAN.
VIKN period. Hit and you connected.
Perfect. Anything else that you would want to say before we close this officially?
Yeah, yeah, I think life is short. Do stuff that matters. That's the bottom line.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for agreeing to be here. And till the time we are not able to meet, sending you a warm virtual hug.
Thank you. Same to you. Take care. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.